Hey, I'm John Greaves III. I'm founder of Garage Gym Life Media, and I'm here talking to Chad Croft, who is in Australia. And I'm talking to Chad because he is the founder of the Static Monsters competition. So, Chad, I'm up too early, and you're up a little bit too late, but I appreciate you carving out some time so we could have this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. It's not too late here yet, so it's okay. And a few of the Aussies are definitely still awake at this time. It's only 7:30 p.m. here, so you're all good.
Awesome, awesome. First question I have for you is, how does it feel to have a country named after you? And whenever you meet somebody named like Sydney, do you ever feel like a little bit
Wait,
superior because they're only
wait,
named after have cities and you have a
wait.
country?
5 minutes ago, you said, "Is there any questions you don't want me to ask you during this interview?" I'm like, where the hell does this come from now? Is there a country named after you?
There
I,
is.
I, I, I actually would have to go back through the history, but I'm quite
Yeah.
sure that that country was named Chad before I was, so I was probably named
Uh,
after a country, I think. So I think I'm more worried about being the meme Chad because he seems to be
oh,
a bit of a wanker that shows up in the memes. So
oh yeah.
that's probably more offensive than the country.
Um, but let's jump into Static Monsters. So give me the quick snapshot of what this competition is and how you got the idea to start it.
Okay, how I got the idea to start it was purely I just wanted to have a comp, the log lift and the deadlift are the core lift events of it. And wagon wheel
Okay.
deadlift is the best way to describe it. So big wheels, high pickup deadlift,
Yeah.
and the wagon wheels tends to be synonymous with strongman as opposed to just plates off the ground, which is powerlifting. And of
Right.
course, the log is probably the pinnacle overhead event within the sport. And I just ran it locally where I am, which is the goal at the time Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. So on
Okay.
the sort of middle east coast of Australia.
Okay. Did you have it at your house or did you rent a place or
No,
what?
we had it in a pub. So
There you go.
yeah, yeah, and they had a events room for it and had tiered seating, so it looked fantastic. And we ran it for the first 2 years. We ran it there. Um, And the first year, I had a great sponsor, Harris Stability Systems, got on board, and they put big cash behind it, where they paid $1 per kilo lifted if the men hit this weight and the women hit this weight, and it was 400 kilos for men and 220 kilos for women on the deadlift.
Okay.
So which was good. Two men hit the deadlift at the time, and one woman hit the deadlift at the time. So it was Eben Larue and Colin Wolfe, both world's strongest man competitors, and Alana Kerno, I think, who's come fourth in the Arnold's amateurs over in USA too, and I think won Australia's women's strongest woman once or twice too. So Harris got behind that, put some cash behind it. It went well, and then a couple of people jumped on board for the next year. Drew Spriggs gave me the idea to run it as a level event where everyone runs under the same rules, the same scoring. You tally it all up, everyone gets a world ranking from it. So year two, we had 9 events. I think it was
Okay.
113 people. And last year was year 6, and we had 985 people across, I think it was 19 countries in the end, and
Nice.
661 cities. COVID knocked that pretty hard on the head. We lost 17 events within the coming weeks, the weeks leading up to the event. And this year the same. We were already down at least 15 events because COVID lockdowns are still affecting multiple cities, not just here in Australia, but around the world.
All right.
So,
100%.
we're still growing well, and I think we'll still see some good numbers because we'll probably do a similar amount of events again this year. But each event has grown in competitor numbers.
The biggest thing I thought about, especially when lockdown happened, is you have a rule about you can't have multiple events too close to each other.
For our drive,
It can't
the
be any
goal was
closer than
just
that.
yeah, the goal is just always been not to have events poaching from each other. Grow
Gotcha.
the sport in multiple areas, make it easy for people to get to.
Was there any consideration to relaxing the restrictions at least until these lockdowns kind of go away?
So
Kind of do it like CrossFit does?
um, the the restriction is on the onus is then put on the local organizer. So if somebody says, "Hey, I want to run an event in city A or suburb B," and there's someone within 4 hours drive already, I'll just give them a message. Hey, are you okay with this event runs? and they normally say yes. So Dave Depew runs Static Monsters down in Southern California area. Jacob Finity also wanted to run one this year, and he's, I think, only 2.5 hours drive away. I've got, I think, 2 in Louisiana State, not too far from each other. I had a couple in Florida, not too far from each other. So these are American references, but over in Australia, where I am, in Sydney, the lockdown in Sydney has been pretty strong for the past couple of months, and they're coming out of lockdown on Monday. And I'd been talking to a couple of gyms about possibly having several smaller events within a short radius, because they could only drive 5 kilometers from their home, which is about 3.5 miles for, the old Freedom units. As they're coming out of lockdown on Monday, they'll be able to run a full event in one city and cover the whole city, theoretically. So, and Melbourne's in a similar issue, another major city here in Australia. So talk to the local organisers, and they're most of the people, or actually everyone involved, is about growing the sport. And so they're quite like, just get it open, and then people can have a go. So other events have happened in that regard, especially during lockdown.
What sort of conversations do you have with someone if they say, hey, I want to have this event, and like you go through like the specs for the equipment, I'm assuming, and things like that, but what goes into that?
If you jump to staticmonsters.com, under the competition menu, there is a how to host section, and in that's where you start. And from there, it tells you what you have to do, what's required from you, what you need to have equipment-wise, what you need to have as far as distance from another event goes. And once you talk to me about you wanting to run an event, you submit your event, I allow it, and then we give you the score sheet, which gives you the details on how to weigh in, what weight classes are acceptable. So we have multiple weight classes. There's 52.5, 62.5, 72.5, under 82.5, and then open women. And then in the men's, there's under 70, under 80, under 90, under 105, and open. We also have masters classes for those over 40 years. And then we have adaptive classes as well. So there's the neuro class, the seated class, the one arm class, the adaptive standing. So say they've got one arm and one leg. And we saw some incredible lifts last year from that. So one of the guys one arm lifting well over 300 kilos, and it still is one of the most popular deadlifts I've ever shared on the Static Monsters social media. There's a video to teach them how to judge the lifts as well, and what's expected from judging. And so we do our best to make it as level and fair playing field as we can, where whichever country we're in, because we're obviously across multiple languages. I think we've got 26 or 27 odd countries have put their hands up to run events. Obviously, COVID is slowing that down, but the languages that cross is multiple. And Google Translate, I'll have to admit, has become very handy, because I can't do multiple languages at all. I speak English and I struggle at that. Google Translate's been very handy in working with people in multiple countries to make sure that they understand, and so that they can also make sure I understand them at the same time, because different requirements and different things go on in each country, and the culture within the sport is different in each country sometimes too.
If you qualify, or you can qualify to compete at the World Championships, and that is a place for the best in the world. All right, so the worldwide is basically like the CrossFit.
It's for everyone.
It's like the CrossFit Open. What are the criteria for the World Championships?
Okay, so as you said, worldwide is for everyone. The goal is to, as we said before, have an event in every city, whether it's in a garage or in a stadium, so that people can come and have a go of their weight class, their ability, whichever, and their age group. The top 10 from each weight class across all events around the world will then get invited to the World Championships. And that's based on what we call the Monster Total. The Monster Total is your combined best log lift and best deadlift. Whatever they add up to, that's your total, and that's where your world ranking comes from in the worldwide. So it's top 10 within the weight class across the world. So it's not top 10 per event. So it's the top 10 across the whole world. So, and if you're in the top 10 after the worldwide event, which is normally held end of October each year, you then get your invite for the World Championships, which is aimed at middle of the year after. Obviously, not everyone can make it to every World Championships every year, and we're not the only big strongman event out there. You've got OSG, you've got Arnold's, you've got SCL. They run their 90 and 105 champs. You've got USS Pro Women Worlds that do a lot for the women. They run these big events around the world. Or not all athletes are going to go to all of them all the time.
Right.
So with that, we then ask competitors if they don't plan to travel to this one, we ask that they let us know, and we then invite the next in line. Gotcha. So that everyone gets the opportunity to go if they can.
You made the weight classes similar to powerlifting. What I thought was exciting about it is about having the weight classes that way is not only does it make Static Monsters even more accessible bridge for someone coming from powerlifting or any other strength, Highland Games, whatever, into strongman, but it also opens things up to more countries. So if I'm from, I don't know, I was just watching some stuff on a guy in Thailand. He's just, he's doing some bag work, whatever. But I'm like, if I'm from that country, it's unlikely that I'm going to be as big as someone who's from Iceland, right? So now it makes it more accessible to more countries, and that's how you can grow.
You hit the nail on the head. So last year, I think was our second year having competitions within mainland China, but the under 70s and under 52.5 class, there was multiple people in those classes. They're typically a smaller frame build across Asia. And if you look at the numbers within those classes, they do really well. The first year we ran the World Championships, 2018, the Filipino strength was phenomenal. So they're really strong within their weight class, and which is why I'm really glad I offered multiple weight classes, because I can see that it's benefiting certain groups, and now they have access to it.
Do you ever sit back and say, this thing has grown beyond my wildest dreams?
No. The problem is I keep comparing it to something like CrossFit or weightlifting, and they're monstrous sports, and they're like,
well, you have to think that way, but you also have to think how long have I been in existence?
Was it 2018? I think CrossFit had a quarter of 232,000 people compete in the Open,
right?
And I didn't even crack 1,000 last year. So, but in saying that, the sport's smaller overall.
Think about it. So the people who run the CrossFit Games, if they compare the CrossFit Games to golf, they're going to say, oh, wow, we're not there yet. Well, golf has been played for centuries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
true.
It's like, who's got a head start? But I would also say that the growth of Static Monsters has potential. I think the growth potential is bigger than CrossFit because CrossFit is closer to the saturation point.
There's a lot of names involved now. There's 92 or 93 people have put their hand up to run events, not just this year, but next year as well. So that's 92 different cities around the world. That's multiple different languages. And sometimes people message me who are running events, and they've got a question about it, and I just can't remember which city they're in. So that makes me really think this is a bit bigger than I had ever planned for. I probably need to be far more organized than I am naturally as a person. And I keep adding new things to my schedule and things that I do within running the event to help me be more organized. Otherwise I'd be in real trouble because I wouldn't remember everyone that's involved now. But it is definitely bigger than what it was a few years ago. And if I was looking at it now a few years ago, I'd be like, holy cow, that's huge. 1,000 people are going to compete this year.
Yeah.
And I think we should comfortably crack 1,000 people in 2 weeks' time. So what are we recording? Is it the 8th?
So this 8th. It's the 8th for me.
8th of October. So I'm guessing this video is going to go out 9th, 10th of October.
Yeah.
So we're 2 weeks out from the 2021 Static Monsters Worldwide, which is the 7th running of it. And I'm pretty confident we'll go over 1,000 competitors. And the events are growing in each city as well as the number of cities being involved. So people know about it in multiple places, which is really cool.
Let's talk about your website a little bit. You've got the frequently asked questions section. What would you say is the question that has surprised you? It never even occurred to me that someone would want to know that.
The one that probably after all these years is still, and I'll end up hating that I've said this out loud because people will throw it at me more and more now, is the Static Monsters an 18-inch deadlift? And no, it's not. Never has been. It's a funny question because Static Monsters start in Australia. We're not a metric country. We don't even
Right.
measure in metric level, so it can't
I
be
don't
an
even know what
18-inch
18
deadlift.
inches. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why that random number of 16.7 inches shows up.
Right.
And how that came about is the wheels that we used in the first Static Monsters were 90 centimeters high.
Okay.
And when you use a 50 millimeter diameter, or roughly 2 inches diameter axle, that brings the bottom of the axle measurement height to 42.5 centimeters off the ground.
Okay.
That's where the measurement came from. So it's within the bar height, there is an 18-inch measurement, but you have to go looking for it, and you could never accurately measure for it. But yeah, Static Monsters isn't and never has been an 18-inch deadlift. That's probably the one that still surprises me when it comes up and people question why isn't an 18-inch deadlift. That's
right.
yeah.
And well, that's people who are coming into it now at this point, and they're not going back and saying, well, what's the reason? Because if you were to change the height, then that would change how you could do records for all previous. Like, can you say, okay, you broke the record? You'd have to
wipe the records.
Or is that a brand new record?
Clean. Yeah,
exactly.
You'd have to wipe the records clean. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so and I understand why people ask the 18-inch. It's been huge in the sport, especially with a regular deadlift bar or whatever.
Right.
And it obviously became very controversial in the past 12 months when Novikov apparently lifted 536 kilos for the record, when Anthony Panisse had actually already lifted 550. So, the 18-inch is very well talked about. But within Static Monsters, it isn't and never has been an 18-inch deadlift. And that's one that pops up a lot. And it frustrates the hell out of me, to be honest.
Excellent. So you all heard it here first. If you want to get him, all you got to do to irritate Chad is just email him and ask him the simple question: is it an 18-inch deadlift? That's it.
I'm never visiting Georgia.
So this is a big deal, though. I don't want to leave before we cover this. In some Static Monsters events, you actually can qualify. So they might add maybe 2 more events, and then that way you can qualify for like United States Strongman Nationals or something like that. But you would find that out by going to the individual event, and then you'd find out what the parameters are that event organizer has put up. What is the cutoff date to sign up?
It depends on each individual organizer. So some who've already filled all their event, they just can't.
Like you said, Liz in New Jersey has already capped hers.
Yeah. So, but to answer, you mentioned before that some people could qualify, say, for USS Nationals. So they talked to Liz and Michael in New Jersey. They also can qualify for the USS Nationals in that event. But if you talk to, say, Big Tommy Burns over in North California, he's near Sacramento from memory. Okay. In his event, you can actually qualify for Strongman Corp Nationals.
Right.
I believe. So there's different versions across the country. Right. But and then of course with any Static Monsters event, if you're in the top 10, you can qualify for the World Championships, which will be in Ohio, USA next year.
One thing that we haven't talked about is money, because this is a big worldwide event. You've got your organization, you've got costs on you. It costs money to maintain a website, just for example, and people don't really think about that. How are you able to run this big thing that you kind of dreamed up one day?
So I'm funded by the merchandise. So if somebody buys a shirt,
you can get a Static Monsters apron and cook with it next time you're making your barbecue.
You really have gone through the merch site. So yes, you can get a Static Monsters apron and cook with it. My favorite
I do research.
There's a little bandana you can get that's suited for your dog, so you can have a Static Monsters logo for your dog to wear its own little bandana. But to answer
get it on your iPhone.
the iPhone cover, or a cooking apron, as you mentioned, doggy bandana for staticmonsters.com. That's helping cover the costs of running the website, running my time, and so competitors, when they compete in their local event, they're paying their local event organizer what they normally pay to be part of an event. The event organizer supplies the equipment, they supply the venue, they supply the insurance, they supply the helpers, they supply the t-shirts and whatever else they give them. And that's what their costs are going for, to make sure the event organizer runs their own event really well like they normally do. They're there to make the sport accessible to everyone in their own local city. From my side, I'm trying to make it accessible to them so that they can be part of something big.
And if you're watching this and you don't understand what Chad is doing for you by not charging you, most organizations, if you want to be a part of the organization, before you can compete, not only do you have to pay your entry fee for the particular event, you also have to be a member. You have to have a membership card in the governing body that sanctions that particular event. And so that's huge. And that amount could vary widely as far as what your national, your membership card costs. And I mean, you might be competing in a federation or whatever once a year, and you're paying $100 to compete once, plus the cost of your entry fee. So it's a really big deal that there is nothing like that here with Static Monsters. So please do what you can. Go and buy some merch.
But if you're watching, buy a shirt or a chef's apron, please. Ultimately, the goal is with Static Monsters to have more access to athletes being able to compete. I would love to have a real big sponsor come on board, help support it, and put prize money in, help athletes get to World Championships events. Maybe even if we do a subset with regional events in the long term. I've got plans for more classes in the future, whether it's a subset of masters, maybe 50 plus. I am really keen on having a juniors classes in the future to help grow the young people in the sport. There's not enough for young people in the sport to have a go. So big sponsor, if they're watching this, get in touch. I'm happy to take 1 million or 10 million. Either is fine. Preferably not rupees. US dollars is much better. But the
no
goal
pesos.
is to
no pesos.
Yeah, no pesos. The goal is to get it in front of more people and have access to more people, whether they're a newbie or whether they're a professional. They all want to have a go, and they can all have access to the sport. So that's what I'd love to happen. It might not ever happen, but so far it's growing. There's more people having a go, whether they're newbies or professionals. We've had some big names have a go over the years. The biggest name of all is Adrianos Saviskas, has competed a couple of times, and he even runs an event, and he'll be running one again in 2 weeks in Lithuania. Okay. So I know he's not going to perform at 100% because he injured his calf in the Shore Classic recently, but he's never
he's doing it.
He's never stepped on a competition platform and not pushed hard. So he'll be there for now and into the future, plus many other big names. So,
well, man, I really, really appreciate you spending the time talking to me. Is there anything that you want to make sure people know that I forgot to ask you or anything like that?
Oh, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I appreciate you getting me on and asking me all the questions. You've researched it really well before you even came on to ask me these questions.
I'm a journalist.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, you've had a look at that. So no, thank you very much. The video you made promoting the Tennessee event is fantastic. So people will be able to find that on the website too. Yeah. Any questions, shoot it through to Static Monsters on Instagram, Static Monsters on Facebook, staticmonsters.com is the website. And info@staticmonsters.com is the email address. Happy to answer your questions and look forward to those who are competing to seeing your world rankings in just after 2 weeks.